You're listening to MANTLE Conversations. Hi, I'm Jello Dianora, the Associate Editor of MANTLE Magazine. You're listening to MANTLE Conversations, a platform where we feature people who can talk about their ideas, expertise, and passions for days on end. On this episode, we speak to Patrick Ray Lim Fernandez, principal at the Yin and Yang Shop of Harmony. Now, Patrick combines classical concepts from feng shui and Chinese metaphysics with his background in business, finance, data science, and real estate. In this episode, he will be giving us the overview of our luck for the year of the thundering water tiger. He'll also talk about a little bit of history. He will delve into the rich tradition of feng shui and Chinese metaphysics. And he'll also touch upon the kinds of mindsets or approaches that we can take whenever we get to hear our personalized readings, our luck overviews for the year, and generally how we must keep an open mind when we get to hear these readings or overviews from feng shui and Chinese metaphysics. We hope you enjoy this interview. Here's Mantle Conversations with Patrick Ray Lim Fernandez. All right. So, hi. Thanks, April. Hi, Patrick. I'm Jello. Actually, I'm all from ODV rin. Pero I also write kasi for Mantle. So, that's the hat I'm wearing right now.
so double threat pala.
All right.
So ODV, how do you help Chad?
I work with April then for PR. Actually, nung last Chinese New Year celebrations ng 2020, kami yung nag-usher. I was ushering the VIPs nung araw na yun. Pero right now, I'm more on the creative side of things with writing mostly. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Kaya pala you look familiar.
I must have been one of those running around escorting VIPs no celebrations.
Okay. Thanks for helping out. We really appreciate
Sure. It's a pleasure.
We were thinking about it, or we're thinking for everyone's safety. It's better.
Right.
So.
Right. To be all safe naman. And yeah, I mean, if it works naman, it works. So
exactly.
All right. So for Mantle, Patrick, the reason why I asked also April for recording is that we plan to release not just the overview as text, but the recording of our audio conversation as an accompaniment to the piece. So that's how we want to proceed with this interview. And yeah, we could get right down into it. Let's go through the overview. And one thing that struck me was, kasi first time ko rin tong malaman, is that the 12 animals of the Chinese zodiac follow certain seasons. And we discussed in the introduction that the year of the tiger also signals the beginning of spring. So I'm a bit curious about that. Can we talk about each season, and later we talk about how significant it is that the year of the tiger is what signals the coming of spring?
Sure, sounds good. So for the Chinese, and to draw like a parallelism to Western astrology. So Western astrology, the 12 zodiac signs are tied to months. So
right.
For example, Pisces, Aries, and so on. And for the Chinese, it also uses like a counting system of 12. It's called the duodecimal system, but it uses the animals instead. And interestingly, for the Chinese, they take it a few steps further. So instead of just using it for the months, it's also used for years, and also even actually for days and hours. So when we look at the, for example, to draw a comparison, at the months for Chinese, the Tiger month is Feb, so early Feb to early March.
Right.
And then that signifies actually the start of spring. If you look at the the astronomical sign, it's a midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. So it's around Feb 4 every year.
Right.
And it's the tiger, the rabbit, and the dragon. Those signify the spring months. So if we take that to years naman, it also then follows a 12-year cycle where the year of the tiger, rabbit, and dragon are the spring years. And then if we follow the cycle, after that, the snake, the horse, and the goat are then the summer years naman.
Right.
For the months, those are the summer months. So the past 3 years were actually winter years. So this was the pig, the rat, and the ox. So 2019 all the way to 2021.
Right.
And this is I think if we overlay that with what happened during, with the world, this is the pandemic.
Right.
So during the winter years of the world, so to speak. So interestingly enough, it coincided. And then if we
Right.
look back 12 years ago, around this time, 2007, 2008, 2009, this was the global financial crisis.
Financial crisis, right, right.
And then if you go back 12 years even further than that, and you may be too young to remember, this is the Asian financial crisis naman. It started like, the baht getting devalued, and then it affected the whole region.
Right.
And this is the late 90s. So, fortunately, after winter comes spring, and spring is always tied to reinvigoration, re-energizing, and all the positive energies that come with blooming and the waking up of the world. So the energies that we're seeing the year of the tiger and the coming year's rabbit and dragon are tied to the spring years.
Right.
And it won't be it won't be right away. It's usually a gradual thing naman, so it happens gradually. So we're looking forward to hopefully the world recovering
Right.
from
Right.
from the winter and into the spring. So that's how the counting system of the Chinese zodiac works with the seasons.
Right. Right. And it's interesting how, culture shape these beliefs and thought systems and vice versa, which is something that we'd like to discuss also later. But going back to the tiger being this year of reinvigoration, we also talked about in the overview that the tiger brings in yang energy, which is characterized by being strong and aggressive. So can we talk more about that energy and how that translates to what we can expect for 2022?
Sure. So for the tiger, it's a yang animal, and usually the yang years happen on even years.
Right.
So last year was the ox, was a yin animal. The year prior to that was a rat, which is a yang animal. And usually the yang animals are tied with a lot of activity, a lot of movement,
Right.
versus their yin counterparts. So for the for the tiger, one of the characteristics actually is it's very bold and very adventurous.
Great.
So part of what we see here with the with the yang energy coupled with the tiger is the activity coupled with trying to push the envelope and being bold.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see a lot more activity this year than last year. And I think it's not coincidental that globally a lot of major world events and political elections usually happen on even years.
Right.
And for us in particular, like for as we're going to this year for tiger, one of the characteristics actually that the year has is it's a yang water year. There's 5 elements in Chinese symbolism, which are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal.
Metal.
Yeah, and this year's a water year, and it's the yang polarity. So water has the yin polarity as well. Yang polarity would be something more similar or akin to the energy from the ocean.
Right.
And the yin water would be something more like a river or a brook, something more calm. The yang energy of the water usually is the most intelligent, the most cerebral of different energy. So actually this year, it's really a year of working not harder but smarter.
Right.
Find creative ways to do your work, to innovate. That will really be like a key characteristic of this year. Um, the key lang is try not to keep be close-minded or narrow-minded. So don't be a know-it-all. Try to get all the information you need to, all the information you can, different points of view, so that you're able to form the most
Right.
accurate assessment before you move forward. So those are some of the characteristics of the Yang water year.
Right. So in summary, it's like pushing the envelope, taking more risks, being bold, but also being responsible about it and being open-minded about it, right?
Exactly. You be bold, but think before you act, so that you don't become impulsive. And
Right.
then try to be the smartest person in the room and put the work to get there. And
Right.
use your brains, but also don't be a know-it-all and don't
Right.
take others' point of views, and try to come up with a 360-degree assessment before you act.
Right. Wise words to live by for the rest of the year. And more than the general overview for the year, we also discussed concepts like STEM energy or the branch of the year and the different stars. Can we first discuss, for someone who may not be familiar with the definitions of each, what they actually are? And later we can go into the specifics of those for the year of the tiger, this 2022.
Sure. So in terms of analyzing like the energy of a given year, there's this thing called the heavenly stems and the earthly
Right.
branch. Heavenly stems are really more tied to the elements, yang metal or yin wood, etc. And the earthly energies come more from the animals, the tiger, the pig, the dog. And usually there's an interaction between all of these different elements. So each animal also has an element, like tiger is a wood element, for example. And then the way the interactions happen, this is what usually determines what the overall luck is. It's sort of like a close analogy would be if your ingredients in a certain meal.
Right.
So depending on how the ingredients mix, it can dictate how the food is going to taste afterward. So similar to the year, there's a mix of different energies from the elements and the animal signs, and that determines, if the year is going to be sweet or bitter or salty, and what the
Right.
different levels be. So, for example, for this year, as mentioned, the the stem of the year is water, and the branch of the year is a tiger, which is wood. Water and wood, fortunately, have a harmonious relationship because water feeds wood, and then it allows the wood to grow. So it
Right.
actually has a good base, a good stem. So there looks to be some good harmony naman this year in terms of what's happening. So we can look forward to, even if there are rises in tensions, rises in conflicts. Dialogue is usually going to usually prevail in terms of coming up with a harmonious relationship. Similarly, there's also other energies that get added on based on the interaction of the ingredients. This one is what I call the spices that you put afterward.
Right.
So there are certain stars that occur that also dictate how it's going to look like, or in our analogy, how the dish is going to taste. So one of the energies, for example, is there's an academic star,
Right.
and this coincides well with the yang water, which is a very intelligent energy. So the academic star is really pushing the envelope from our learning naman. So we're able to push ourselves to learn new skills, be it for professional skill sets or personal skill sets. So try as much to learn new things, expand your intellectual horizon, and take on new projects. Even if learning by doing will also work. So
Right.
that's one of the stars for this year. Unfortunately, there's some health stars that adversely affect the energy of the year. So as when we're already clearly seeing it with all the with this new variant. So it's something that is unfortunately part of the element mix of
Right.
the year. But the good thing is, once we know what the elements are and what the energies are, really the key thing is what do we do about it. So to use another analogy, this is really for me close to like a weather forecast or like a weather overview.
Right.
You're able to determine the different energies that are coming in and out. And on feng shui, this is really qi. That's the energy that's being charted out and being mapped. And the more you're able to understand what may happen based on cycles, then the more you're able to prepare. So if you know, for example, it's going to rain tomorrow, then you can prepare yourself to dress appropriately, bring an umbrella, travel earlier to avoid traffic and so on. So that's for me, at least if we know that the energies are there, how we
Right.
prepare for it, I think even more important.
Right. I like the analogy of the recipe and how different flavors can work together to cater to, for example, certain tastes, which I think goes into my next question about how people have their own charts based on their birth circumstances. And your analogy about the weather forecast, allowing you to determine what you need to do based on cycles, also ties into my uh, connected question about the mindset that you take when you are able to hear or read your overview. So the question I have is that, we have personalized readings per person that are tied uh, to their birth circumstances. So you already explained this a bit earlier, but I'd like to go more into detail about what kind of mindset or approach must a person take when they get to hear their personalized readings? Like some people treat it as gospel truth. Some people treat it as, like what you said earlier, like a forecast that could determine what they could do. Or what if yung reading nila or the overview is something they don't agree with, so kinakabahan sila. So I'd like to go more into that in detail.
Sure. So I think for me, it's we see two different types of clients generally. The first one is the ones who have been with us for, I would say at this point, decades already.
Right.
Who come back every year for a reading of how the year's energy is going to affect them. For those folks, it's really seeing their mindset is because they've already understood all the details. It's really like a refresh of how is this year's energy versus last year's and what should they do. To your point, if someone is brand new coming into it and they've never had one before and they're still kind of ramping up their knowledge about the Chinese side of astrology or metaphysics versus Western or other different frameworks. For me, the recommendation I usually have is keeping an open mind.
Right.
Because it's, as mentioned, a new way of looking at, looking at one's energy, and they're called different names, and they have different symbolisms. But at the end of the day, I think what it boils down to is how it relates to the human experience. I think we'll talk about a little more about that on the culture side. But in terms of the mindset, um, what I've seen is like for our Chinese clients already familiar with the patsa or the framework of how we analyze it. When we have folks who are not familiar, maybe who are not Chinese or who aren't familiar with it, we help explain. Because I think for me, educating them on what it is and how it works is most important. And I'm a big proponent of education and continual learning. So if one comes into it with an open mind, with an interest of seeing how it relates to them, how it relates to their loved ones, how it relates to their community and the world at large, it gives them an additional lens of how to view the world, like a different worldview. There's many different lenses out there. For me, the nice thing with this lens, it's very quantitative and systematic, which is I think what also drew me to it as well.
Right.
In doing on the side, I also do like finance and data science. So I try to use like algorithms and code to help with some of these calculations. So Just for example, we talked about the ingredients earlier, right?
Right.
Each one is a birth chart based on their year, their month, their day, and their time, and there's an element and a zodiac animal tied to it. We also and layered over that is their pillars. On top of it, that go for 10 years in terms of luck pillars. And after that, there's also the yearly energy, like the water tiger, for example. So if you add all of those combinations of ingredients, you can make 47 billion different dishes.
Right.
And
Mm.
there's only a billion people in the world, so there's more than enough. There's it's very unique per individual from that aspect. So I think that's one thing that when we're able to give them kind of the facts and the numbers, and also just the explanation of how this works from a physical perspective. And it's not, religion. It's not really mysticism or fortune telling. It's really based on readings of astronomical bodies and Earth energies and how it affects the human experience. For me, that resonates with people. And then from there, it's like, okay, so that's the what, right? That's the energies of what's going to happen in your relationships or what's going to happen in your money, luck, and so on. So how it affects everything. And then the next part we then go into is the how.
Right.
Everyone's unique life situation, so that, for example, if we say someone has good money luck, it affects someone differently if they're a business owner versus there's someone who's just starting off their career. Or when we talk about relationships, let's say it's different for, say, someone's a mother of three versus someone who's who just got a new boyfriend. So
Right.
it then depends on how are you then going to take that energy that's being put into your particular life situation and context, and what's the right strategy. And for me,
Right.
that's more hard as well. Like, you can help strategize. What do you do? How do you talk to your boss? What do you tell your girlfriend? Do you move your house? All of those things then get layered on. So for me, yeah, it's a guide. It's like a roadmap of, here's all the things that could happen, and here's the best path for you to take to get to your end goal.
Right. So, with all these readings, I mean, all the overviews, self awareness does play a huge part in being able to work well with what you're given, right? Mm-mm.
I agree. Yeah, because to your point, self-awareness. Sometimes you could take things, and you talked earlier about what reactions there could be. If people are closed-minded, nothing will change their mind unless it coincides with their worldview.
Right.
uh, if people are open-minded, it gives them that additional perspective of how they can see things, and then they become, they think about all the possibilities. Yeah, for close-minded folks, nothing will change their mind, and
Right.
for us, fortunately, we don't see a lot of them come to our doors. But yeah, that's what I recommend. This is something that's been around for thousands of years, both in terms of looking at the personal luck of people and also the property luck on the feng shui side, from the home or the office and living in harmony with nature. All of these have been around for a long time. They're very well documented. They're based on systems of observation. So I would say give it a try and see how it resonates with you. And what's the saying? No, don't knock it till you've tried it. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
You've touched upon the rich history of feng shui and Chinese metaphysics, and the analogy earlier about having 47 billion different kinds of dishes based on the ingredients you have speaks of the diversity of concepts, components, principles within these systems of thought. And that leads to my last question about history, culture, and belief systems. Feng shui and Chinese metaphysics are shaped by, of course, the culture from which they originated, and at the same time, they continuously shape culture as well. So I want to talk more about that. If we could explore the history and that dynamic between culture and belief systems, and as cherry on top of that is here in the Philippines, of course, about how feng shui and Chinese metaphysics have had their influence in our culture as well, and where you see it heading toward? So, yeah.
Sure, yeah, I think it's a great question. Like, because it's a very, um, you know, it's a very meta way of looking at it, right? Because like with most things, it's a product of the culture, yet it also contributes to the culture, and it
Right,
becomes like cyclical type of feedback loop, right? Where one
right.
informs the continuously. Um, so for feng shui, in particular, that has a longer history. That one's been around for about 6,000 years or so. That one is really, it has to do more with the physical world, in terms of one's home, one's office, and back in the day, this was actually knowledge that was only reserved for the emperor.
Right.
And so you would have these feng shui masters, feng shui experts who would not really share their knowledge, and they would keep it actually only within the royal court or those in privilege. And interestingly, over the years, as China went through several warring periods, and there were some invasions from the Mongols and so on, or and other invaders, the Chinese, their ingenious way of keeping this knowledge secret was they would actually take several different versions of these
Mm,
texts and spread it around so that whoever, if they were invaded and this knowledge was obtained, or these books, now the invaders would not know which is the correct version.
right.
There are several different versions. So fortunately now we, throughout the millennia, now we have what we're using is the correct one, not the
Yeah.
although I think maybe other people use the incorrect text. But for this one, it's gone through centuries of refinement of surviving through wars and conflict, and fortunately now it's knowledge it's accessible to everyone. So
Right.
in terms of shapes culture, not just emperors or royalty now have the privilege or the ability to use knowledge of Earth's energy patterns to know where to live or how to situate their beds or their desks or their kitchen. It's information that now everyone can use in any part of the world, really. Um, like for example, I've been back and forth, but I've been based in the U.S. for about more than 20 years now, and feng shui over there is gaining a strong foothold. I think it's really due to a resurgence in caring about the environment, climate change and whatnot. Because feng shui is really how do we live in harmony with nature,
Right.
and this resonates with this generation a lot, and I'm sure for future generations as well. And a lot of people, like like I heard from a Western architect that feng shui is being used in designing multi-million-dollar homes in Beverly Hills, in Malibu, downtown LA, and so on. So it's really something that's still very well and alive, not just in China, but in different parts of the world, in the West, and even here in the Philippines. And then for Chinese metaphysics, very similar story. It's been refined over the years as well. That one is a lot more computationally intensive, I would say, because of the combinations. But yeah, that one affects more one's personal luck and also the luck of one's family, to see how that changes over time. And uh, in terms of how it shapes human behavior, um, those people who are open-minded, as mentioned earlier, they would use this information as a guide of how to then proceed through their year. And oftentimes, what I find is, for example, there's an energy that even at the time it doesn't make sense to them,
Right.
but sometime in the year they remember, oh yeah, I remember during my reading this energy was mentioned. So they become more aware that it's there, and they can already tell themselves this is how they're going to act if it happens. So for example, there's a star called the gossip star, or an envy star, where people might get jealous of you and people might talk behind your back. It might not be happening at the moment, but when it does happen, they remember back to, oh yeah, that does happen. And I told myself, if it does occur, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to react. So it helps them get through that. It takes them out of the situation. They become more objective, and they don't
Right.
react. They can respond in the right way. So I think all of that, in terms of how it shaped, like for Philippine culture in particular. So for the Filipino Chinese, they're already familiar with it. you know, through their parents or grandparents. I know, like for us, for example, we're just coming from a Chinese family. It's been part of our DNA. For the ones who are picking it up, as a first, for them, for the first generation, they're treating it as something that they want to expose themselves and eventually even their kids do. We've
Right.
had actually several clients where they brought their kids in to consult because they're already at college age and they want to determine what's the right career path for their kids, or they may already be in their first job or a course in college, and then they want confirmation if it's the right path or if they should shift. And again, we give them options at that point to determine how it should look like. And of course, you mentioned culture. As things get updated, for example, now we have the tech industry, which is tied to fire. So 50 years ago, this really didn't exist, but now it dominates the world, right? So we can then adapt these readings to say, okay, if you're a fire person, technology is part of that, and if it's your favorable element, it's something you maybe want to explore. And if you also have like a strong banking or finance element in your chart, you could maybe join those together and do like fintech or something, or crypto, right? Something along those lines. And we can adapt it to this new culture, right? This new zeitgeist of ours of how the world looks like, and make it more adaptable. Interestingly, one of the main texts is called the Farmer's Almanac, and it's still called the
Mhm.
Farmer's Almanac today, but it's still very relevant. But instead of deciding do you grow turnips or radishes, it's deciding do I join Google or Apple, right? So,
True.
but it's the same energies that are present, just interpreted differently for today's context.
Right, right. With such a diversity of, sources and history, and with all the different combinations, I could just imagine how painstaking yet rewarding it is to be able to provide these readings to your clients and for us in general. So thank you so much for the work that you do, Patrick.
My pleasure. Yeah, I think for me, being able to just help guide people through their thought process and provide
Right.
them a way of looking at things, a different perspective. Sometimes they've already have a course of action and they just want confirmation. The other
Hmm.
times it runs counter to what they're thinking, that it makes them have a deeper dialogue with themselves, a deeper train of thought, and it challenges their beliefs and assumptions, and then they come up with the right solution. But what I always give, and something I've gotten from my previous corporate training, is everyone needs options.
Right. Right.
Uh, I think from what we've seen with some people's concept of a feng shui master is, this one is bad luck, good luck. This one can't, bawal, or
Hmm.
and then it's gospel, right? Usually we try to provide options, right? You say you can go down this path, but it will just be a much more difficult path. Yeah, but you can definitely do it, right? You can choose to do these other paths. It will maybe a little easier, a bit more fulfilling, right? Down the road, not maybe at this point with what you know, but at least you're aware, right? And then you make the decision at the end of the day. We show them the door, but they still have to walk through it.
Yeah, I like how the power of choice still remains with the people, and it's not something that you impose to
Oh,
people who.
for sure. Yeah, there's definitely still the power of agency on the part of
Right,
people make their own
right,
decision. We're really just
right.
guiding. Yeah.
And surely the overview that we have for the Year of the Tiger is something that we will all take into consideration when we make our decisions for the rest of the year. All right. So thank you so much, Patrick, for your time. Really insightful, really great conversation that you have. And thank you then, April, for
Thank
coordinating this.
you.
Mm-mm. All
Thank you.
right. So pag inentong call, no? Since co-host tayo, we'll both get the recording naman.
Okay. Do you want me to send it to you?
Check natin. Kasi kung meron na pala ako, edi okay na pala yun.
Alright. Sige, sige,
Mm.
sige.
May isa ka pang
Thanks.
interview, Patrick, no?
Um,
April?
or
Yes.
for today, yeah, and then
For
Uh,
so far it's been a good day, and thanks for sending your questions in advance. I think it really helps facilitate the conversation. And
yeah.
so I think, so I guess for Mantle, Chad was telling us a little bit about it. It used to be like a partnership with ODV and Bulletin, and then now it's mostly ODV. Is that correct?
Right, it's mostly
Yes.
independent. Yeah.
Owned
That's good.
solely by ODV now.
Okay, okay. And
Mm-mm.
then you get mga contributors to help provide content, but there's also main content providers.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yes.
Parang the analogy I'm drawing is like Huffington Post or I don't know, or Medium, right? There's main contributors, but they also open themselves up to other contributors who are experts in the field, parang ganon.
Oh yes,
There's
definitely.
Just looking through the website and then mga contributors. There's a guy who's listed as contributor. His name's Jason Inocencio.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
He's one of my classmates at college. So
Ah,
Mm.
he's into actually he's into a lot of things like basketball, mga anime, mga ganun. So I know he has a wide of interests. So and I think if he wrote for our school newspaper, if I'm not mistaken, I know he writes well.
Mhm.
So
He
and
used
I'm
to be
glad you
with Adobo magazine also.
okay. And I'm glad you guys are what's this multimedia as well. So apart from just print, kasi some people prefer to listen, some people prefer to watch, diba? So at least there's multimedia approach.
right.
Sometime last year, on my other field naman sa data science, there was a org sa California who reached out. So we did a similar interview, but that one's more about um, you know, data science in banking. Ganun. So it was similar. We did an interview. And then it was mostly in their podcast that they had on Spotify. And then they also had I think a YouTube channel. It was mostly audio also. And then there's some short write-up. But at least multimedia, you can consume it the way you want to. So, ayun.
Yeah, like similar to what you said, we're giving options also to people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Before and Jella, just curious. If you want, I'll do a quick reading for you.
Oh, sure.
What's your birthday?
My birthday is September 25, 1996.
We're so young pa. I graduated college 96, so just for
Oh,
we
it's a
had,
cycle.
yeah, we had our 25th parang homecoming this year, so yun.
For ME, no?
Yeah. So are you at Ateneo also?
I was in ME for 2 years, and
Ah,
then I decided, sabi ko, this is not for me, so I shifted to English literature.
ah, nice. Was Danton Remoto still there or ano?
He was visiting. I think he was busy with either political work or writing his own novel yata. But I did see him in 2015 when he visited the department.
Okay. Yeah, he was a teacher of Princess, my sister, and then but he was in another. See, Doreen Fernandez, is she? I know she passed. Was she still there? Or I know she was writing books also.
I think she passed on before I got into college. Yeah.
Okay. She was another paragon of the English
Yeah.
department.
Right.
Yeah, we had our ME 25th this year, so it was all virtual na. So what's this? It was okay naman. I was part of the organizing committee, so it was fun. Parang naging college, you see all your college classmates naging parang project.
Parang org work lang for Maya ulit.
Honestly, we had weekly Zoom calls. We had yung mga ganun. So it was actually pretty fun rin na, So, are you Chinese, Jello?
No, I just look like it.
You look very Chinese. So your year is Rat 96.
Yes.
Your month is Rooster. Your day is Ox. Do you know your time?
I think it was around 6:48. Early on in the day. I think.
In the morning.
In the morning, yes.
Okay. And then your rabbit time naman. So actually, interestingly, so in your chart, we talk about life energies, diba?
Right.
Your year is rat, your hour is rabbit. the rat and the rabbit has this relationship called it's like a punishment penalty.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
so anyway, what it means naman is ano, you'll find yourself what's this, second guessing yourself a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, na parang let's say you're going down a path and then like ito, I think like your decision to choose ME and then English lit ganun. The nice thing is it shows your flexibility. Na parang you're able to put these things in your mind and then you're able to choose the right path for you. But I think in terms of your built-in the good thing in your chart is your day is ox and then your year is rat. Those two are the best friends. So it shows good compatibility of the day and also the year. The ox this year is actually good from a relationship perspective, so personal relationships and also professional relationships. So you can grow your network and build deeper relationships. Rooster's actually pretty good from a career perspective. It's actually one of the best. So this is the year to be bold. If you want to take on projects, if you want to ask Chad for more work, if you want to get expand your horizons, this is a good year to do it. Actually, I think you have the energy, and it's all about you have the drive, you have the motivation this year to do with this. So take advantage of it. Other years it may not be there as much. So the main thing lang Jello is the rat kasi has certain health stars, yung sickness stars. So just ingat na lang with your health. Sure na you're taking precautions and so on. And again, parang like we said earlier, the energy's there, pero how you deal with it naman is I think what's more important. So if you take naman the right precautions, take care of yourself, get enough rest and so on, then you should be fine. So just some things to medyo watch out for. And then another thing, for the ox kasi there's a quarrel star. So just in case people make you away, don't don't battle them, just let them be. So just from the conflict perspective. But yeah, overall it's a good year to work hard. You'll have mga people who will be your benefactors at work, and people who want to support you and want to see you succeed. So if you want to find mentors this year, it's a good year to do it. Especially if you have endeavors that you want to get through. It's another watch out lang for mga sudden changes. So let's say you're already going down one path, then all of a sudden it didn't go exactly as planned. Just be prepared to pivot, come up with the plan B and be flexible versus being bogged down of trying to just say, okay, it didn't work, let's pivot quickly and then move forward. So I think that one is on the work perspective. Anyway, just some thoughts as you go throughout the year.
Pleasant surprise. I wasn't expecting that I would get a reading for the interview, but thank you so much. A lot of things to take note and think about as well.
Okay.
All right. Good luck on your last interview, Patrick, and thank you again. Thank you, April, also for connecting us.
Yes. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Patrick. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to MANTLE Conversations. For future episodes, you can check out our website, mantlemagazine.com, or follow us on Facebook and Instagram @MantleMagazine.